Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to a series of videos in which I am reading you a book. And for Jane Austen July, we are reading Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And we are up to chapter 11. Poor Jane is still bedridden with a cold. She's still bedridden, which means that Elizabeth Bennet is still at Netherfield Hall. And since Jane is slowly improving, Elizabeth is feeling a little more of her oats to engage with everybody else. We have seen her cross mental swords with Mr. Bingley. We have seen her cross mental swords with Darcy. She's showing up in the main room. She's coming down from Jane's bedroom long enough to show up and take part in evenings of one kind or another, country house evenings. And that's what we get in this chapter. So this is chapter 11. When the ladies removed after dinner, Elizabeth ran up to her sister and, seeing her well guarded from cold, attended her into the drawing room. So Jane is finally making an appearance again from her sickbed, where she was welcomed by her two friends, that is, the two Miss Bingleys, and many professions of pleasure. And Elizabeth had never seen them so agreeable as they were during the hour which passed before the gentlemen appeared. Their powers of conversation were considerable. They could describe an entertainment with accuracy, relate an anecdote with humor, and laugh at their acquaintance with spirit. But when the gentlemen entered, Jane was no longer the first object. Miss Bingley's eyes were instantly turned towards Mr. Darcy, and she had something to say to him before he had advanced many steps. He addressed himself directly to Miss Bennet, with a polite congratulation. Mr. Hurst also made her a slight bow, and said he was very glad. But diffuseness and warmth remained for Bingley's salutation. He was full of joy and attention. The first half hour was spent in piling up the fire, lest she should suffer from the change of room, and she removed at his desire to the other side of the fireplace, that she might be farther from the door. He then sat down by her, and talked scarcely to anyone else. Elizabeth, at work in the opposite corner, saw it all with great delight, in a way that she would not delight in the matchmaking machinations of her mother. This isn't matchmaking. This is genuine on both parts. When tea was over, Mr. Hurst reminded his sister-in-law of the card table, but in vain. She had obtained private intelligence that Mr. Darcy did not wish for cards, and Mr. Hurst soon found even his open petition rejected. She assured him that no one intended to play, and the silence of the whole party on the subject seemed to justify her. Mr. Hurst therefore had nothing to do but stretch himself on one of the sofas and go to sleep. He wants to play cards, and the reason Darcy has forbidden it is not because Darcy cares. It's because he doesn't think Elizabeth likes it. Because they were playing for high stakes, and she's poor. Darcy took up a book, Miss Bingley did the same, and Mrs. Hurst, principally occupied in playing with her bracelets and rings, joined now and then in her brother's conversation with Miss Bennet. Miss Bingley's attention was quite as much engaged in watching Mr. Darcy's progress through his book as in reading her own. How annoying. God, you thought it was annoying that she was watching and commenting on him writing a letter. Imagine somebody watching you while you read a book. Again, and then again, all you cat people. Anyway, and she was perpetually either making some inquiry or looking at his page. She could not win him, however, to any conversation. He merely answered her question and read on. At length, quite exhausted by the attempt to be amused with her own book, which she had only chosen because it was the second volume of his, she gave a great yawn and said, "How pleasant it is to spend an evening in this way! I declare, after all, there is no enjoyment like reading. Well, how much sooner one tires of anything than a book! When I have a house of my own, I shall be miserable if I have not an excellent library." Keep in mind, she's reading volume 2. She picked up volume 2 of the book where he has volume 1. So she wasn't reading it. She wouldn't have understood it if she were. She's starting in the middle. She absolutely does not care. But no one made any reply. She then yawned again, threw aside her book, and cast her eyes around the room in quest of some amusement. When hearing her brother mentioning a ball to Miss Bennet, she turned suddenly towards him and said, "By and by, Charles, are you really serious in meditating a dance at Netherfield? I would advise you, before you determine on it, to consult the wishes of the present party. I am much mistaken if there are not some among us to whom a ball would be rather a punishment than a pleasure." "If you mean Darcy," cried her brother, and of course she does, "he may go to bed, if he chooses, before it begins. But as for the ball, it is quite a settled thing. As soon as Nichols has made white soup enough, I shall round up my cards. I shall send round my cards." Keeping in mind here, the white soup, a whole bunch of other preparations, this is no small thing. To put on a ball like this and invite the whole neighborhood. It's no small thing. It takes preparation to do. I should like balls infinitely better, she replied, if they were carried on in a different manner. But there is something insufferably tedious in the usual process of such a meeting. It would be surely much more rational if conversation instead of dancing were made the order of the day. Much more rational, my dear Caroline, I dare say, but it would not be near so much like a ball. Miss Bingley made no answer, and soon afterwards got up and walked about the room. Her figure was elegant, and she walked well, but Darcy, at whom it was all aimed, was still inflexibly studious, and in desperation of her feelings she resolved on one effort more, and turning to Elizabeth, said, Miss Eliza Bennet, let me persuade you to follow my example and take a turn about the room. I assure you it is very refreshing after sitting so long in one attitude. Keep in mind, the room is probably very big. It's probably the main gallery, the main room of Netherfield Hall, which would mean you might think taking a turn around the room is no big deal. If you took a turn around this room, it wouldn't take you very long. This is probably a very big place with lots of hanging pictures, maybe some ornamentation or sculpture. Elizabeth was surprised, but agreed to it immediately. Miss Bingley succeeded no less in the real object of her civility. Mr. Darcy looked up. He was as much awake to the novelty of attention in that quarter as Elizabeth herself could be, and unconsciously closed his book. He was directly invited to join their party, but he declined it, observing that he could imagine but two motives for their choosing to walk up and down the room together, with either of which motives his joining them would interfere. What could he mean? She was dying to know what could be his meaning, and then asked Elizabeth whether she could at all understand him. Not at all, said Elizabeth, but depend on it, he means to be severe on us, and our surest way of disappointing him will be to ask nothing about it. Miss Bingley, however, was incapable of disappointing Mr. Darcy in anything, and persevered, therefore, in requiring an explanation of these two motives. What are the two reasons why two women could get up and walk about the room? I have not the smallest objection to explaining them, said he, as soon as she allowed him to speak. You either choose this method of passing the evening because you are in each other's confidence and have secret affairs to discuss, or because you are conscious that your figures appear to greatest advantage in walking. If the first, I should be completely in your way, and if the second, I can admire you much better as I sit by the fire. So, yes, a big room, because you can have confidential conversations when you're at the other end of it. Oh, shocking, cried Miss Bingley. I never heard anything so abominable. How shall we punish him for such a speech? Nothing so easy if you have but the inclination, said Elizabeth. We can all plague and punish one another. Tease him, laugh at him, imitate him. As intimate as you are, you must know how it is to be done. Imagine the idea of teasing, Mr. Darcy. But upon my honor, I do not. I do assure you that my intimacy has not yet taught me that. Tease, calmness of temper, and presence of mind? No. I feel he may defy us there. And as to laughter, we will not expose ourselves, if you please, by attempting to laugh without a subject. Mr. Darcy may hug himself. Mr. Darcy is not to be laughed at, cried Elizabeth. That is an uncommon advantage, and uncommon I hope it will continue, for it would be a great loss to me to have many such acquaintances. I dearly love a laugh. Miss Bingley, said he, has given me credit for more than can be. The wisest and best of men, nay, the wisest and best of their actions, may be rendered ridiculous by a person whose first object in life is a joke. Certainly, replied Elizabeth, there are such people, but I hope I am not one of them. I hope I never ridicule what is wise or good. Follies and nonsense, whims and inconsistencies do divert me, I own, and I laugh at them whenever I can. But there, I suppose, are precisely what you are without. Perhaps that is not possible for anyone, but it has been the study of my life to avoid those weaknesses which often expose a strong understanding to ridicule. Such as vanity and pride? Yes, vanity is a weakness indeed, but pride, where there is real superiority of mind, pride will always be under good regulation. He's insufferable, but he can be fixed. Elizabeth turned away to hide a smile, because she is laughing at him. He's making it worse. With everything he says, he's making it worse. Your examination of Mr. Darcy is over, I presume, said Miss Bingley, and pray, what is the result? I am perfectly convinced by it that Mr. Darcy has no defect. He owns it himself. without disguise. "No," said Darcy, "I have made no such pretension. I have faults enough, but they are not, I hope, of understanding. My temper I dare not vouch for. It is, I believe, too little yielding, certainly too little for the convenience of the world. I cannot forget the follies and vices of others so soon as I ought, nor their offences against myself. My feelings are not puffed about with every attempt to move them. My temper would perhaps be called resentful. My good opinion, once lost, is lost forever." We're going to learn that's true. A key plot element is going to show that's true. Although there's a way in which it's not true. Both he and Elizabeth have a lot to learn about themselves. "That is a failing indeed," cried Elizabeth. "Implacable resentment is a shade in a character. But you have chosen your fault well. I really cannot laugh at it. You are safe from me. There is, I believe, in every disposition a tendency to some particular evil, a natural defect, which not even the best education can overcome. And your defect is a propensity to hate everybody. And yours," he replied with a smile, "is wistfully to misunderstand them. Willfully to misunderstand them. Do let us have a little music," cried Miss Bingley, tired of a conversation in which she had no share. "Louisa, will you not mind waking Mr. Hurst?" Her sister made not the smallest objection, and the pianoforte was opened, and Darcy, after a few moments of recollection, was not sorry for it. He began to feel the danger of paying Elizabeth too much attention. So we have, once again, the chapter ends on the same note of foreboding, of a danger to Darcy. The more he gets involved with Elizabeth, the more he, I will say, verbally spars with her, but we could certainly call what's happening in this chapter flirting. Both of them. It's like I said in the last chapter, Darcy has never met anyone like this. That is clear. He's never met anyone, male or female, that was like this, that was not afraid of him, that could tease him, that could anticipate him, that could turn what he views as his greatest strengths into things he wants eagerly to deny. That is an evening. A pleasant enough evening. Jane is out of danger. She even visited for a little bit. And once again, we have been told that Darcy is feeling something that threatens to overturn his entire life. And Jane Austen makes sure to characterize that something as a threat, as a danger to Darcy. So what's that heightens the tension. How long is this gathering at Netherfield Hall going to go on? Obviously, we know another dramatic nodule is going to be this dance, this ball at Netherfield Hall. That hasn't happened yet. Jane and Elizabeth are still at Netherfield Hall. What is going to come of this? Let's keep going. I'll see you next time. Thank you, BookTube.